Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, we're going to continue with the From Inspiration to Implementation series. And this is where I take something that inspires me, I work around it, creating some ideas in my journal, and then I create a finished, slow-stitched piece. Now, today's inspiration was the manatee. Now, the manatee is a very beautiful and funny-looking animal that lives in the seas in Florida. It lives in waterways, the ocean, the Gulf, and rivers as well. And we actually see them quite a bit by our home. Now, we also go kayaking a lot, so we're in the waterways, and we see them that way as well. They're big creatures, kind of like whales, but they really like the warm water. And despite their size, over 1,200 pounds, they're just herbivores, so there's no chance of an animal attack. As a matter of fact, they're very gentle creatures. One thing that I was impressed with most when I actually encountered a manatee was just how peaceful they are. And I didn't know how I was going to be able to get that across in my work. Through the years, I've created many paintings of manatees just because I'm so inspired by these gentle giants. But I really wanted to figure out a way to capture that peacefulness, that sereneness that they bring. Now, if you don't know what a manatee is or you haven't seen one in person, that's not unusual. Until I started visiting Florida, I didn't even know they existed. Then you find out the history of them, and that's so intriguing because when manatees were in the water, apparently, as the story goes, sailors thought they were women or people, and so they were considered mermaids. Now, the comparison to seeing a woman in the water and calling her a manatee isn't a very flattering comparison, but there is something human-like about these creatures, and maybe that's what the sailors saw in their water. They couldn't really place what it was, so they called it something they were familiar with. Or maybe they just had been at sea so long that they hadn't seen a woman in a while. But either way, the manatee just has so many interesting aspects to it. So to create a slow stitch piece, I start where I always start with, and that's my inspiration. So I had my topic, the manatee, and then I did my research. And then based on that research, I recorded it into my art journal. I made a pencil sketch of a manatee, and this got things rolling in my mind, and I started thinking about it. Now, this process took a few weeks. This wasn't a one-time deal where I thought about a manatee, I made a sketch, and I researched it. I just kind of came up with new things constantly over and over again. And living in Florida, manatees are in the news. Somebody will spot a manatee, or unfortunately somebody will run into one with their boat. And so these things make the news, both local and statewide. So manatees are kind of always on my mind. From there, once I had my journal page where I had kind of worked out my thoughts, I gave it some more thought. And then I created a fabric manatee. Now, to create this manatee, I had a list of things I wanted to achieve, some goals along with it. I wanted to accomplish a nice expression, a feeling of that kindness and sereneness that those manatees bring. I wanted to capture their size, the scope of them, and just how gentle they were. So here's my finished stitched piece, and I'll explain my thoughts a little further. So then I took to my sketchbook to create a manatee, and I used colored pencils here. And then I included a sticker here, which I had painted previously and had them made into stickers. And if you want, I'll share that link where you can get some of your own. But then I have my manatee here, and I really wanted to capture the scale and the scope because these creatures are kind of really funny looking. In a way, they're so ugly that they're cute, but they're just so overly gentle. And you really feel that when you see them. They don't tend to splash a lot. They're not a high anxiety animal. They just kind of glide through the water. And when you see the size of them, it's pretty amazing because they don't swim and move like whales. They swim determined, but lackadaisical. It's very unusual. So here is the beautiful manatee, the sketch. Then I included all the interesting things that I learned from him. And I wanted to really capture that playfulness and that innocence of that manatee. So I worked on that with my stitching. Now, to do that, I had to really come up with some rounded corners and some just gentle shapes. And so that's how I started out, by cutting out my fabric to make these just simple shaped creatures. It's hard to believe they're actually real. They look more like cartoon characters than actual living creatures. So from there, I started adding details and embellishments, and I added lots of wrinkles. something to make him a little different than a seal. So I decided to cut out some of these fabric shells from some fabric that I had, and I just stitched them down, further embellishing them. I added another piece here, just a little applique. I added the word manatee and just a fun little swirl. So because of the face and the simple, just gentle curves in the shape, I have a really friendly, non-threatening creature, even though they're larger than 1,200 pounds. I have that simple face, the gentle smile, and I love this expression. He looks like a big teddy bear to me. So that's how I created the manatee onto fabric. So this will go into my fabric book. And it's just a fun way to capture the expression of a creature, just their personality, with a simple fabric and a few stitches. So that's how I took my inspiration, the manatee, and incorporated that using fabric onto my stitched page. Now I have a page for my journal that I can add to my book. Now most of the pages in this journal are either sea creatures or something natural in the environment. And I'm starting to really like that. I'm seeing a theme develop. Thanks for joining me today. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. And in the comments below, tell me your experiences with manatees. Or is this the first time you've heard of them? Take care.